Heavenly Father, I thank you for this Sabbath day. I thank you for bringing us all together. Thank you for your rest, your refreshing, for the wisdom that you make sure that we all have ample opportunity to receive and to understand. I thank you, Lord, for bringing us all into unity and harmony, even though there's going to be a lot of growing pains first. I pray that we take those growing pains in stride and with a balanced mind and a contrite and humble heart. I ask all of this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. All right. Well, happy Sabbath. So today's presentation today's study, I'm drawing largely from Elder Tessa's on the 31st of December. It was number 1 in the German, in the Finn camp meeting in the end of 2000, beginning of 2001. And the title is In God We Trust Revisited. So and I just want to start off by saying if anybody has a question, I'm not going to trust myself to be able to get to all of the questions if you're typing them into the chat. So if please somebody just bring my attention to the question or just interrupt me. Just ask your question at any time. This is hopefully going to be more of a conversation rather than just me blathering on. I'd really like for you guys to feel comfortable, not just talking, but also asking questions or adding insight. But her study starts off, which is something that I know I need to do more of, and that's going to the lines. I don't know if I've fiddled with this, and this is as best as I could get. So I don't know. You can kind of see this top line, the 144,000. So, and I kind of have it mapped out for us to make it a little bit easier to see on the 144,000 line, as well as on the line of the priests or the first fractal, in comparison to the second group, the second fractal being the Levites, the third being the Nethinims. So just to orient ourselves, just to get familiar with where we are, to not be afraid of, just drawing the reform lines and putting down consistently where we are, to kind of orient ourselves in time. It's almost like, checking the road map, right? We have directions, we have compass, we have all of these tools to get us, and a lot of times when we just plug in the address in our car and it just goes, we take a lot of this for granted, that there are, oh wow, that's backwards. You can't see that at all.
Yeah, we can.
You can?
I can see the board clearly. Yeah.
Okay, it looks backwards to me. Okay, as long as you can see it, that's fine. So looking at these waymarks and seeing what's ahead, seeing where we've come, is a really important tool for our body and our minds to be able to grasp that sense of orientation, to grasp that sense of just grasping a hold of the lines. I mean, if you think about kind of anchoring ourselves in along the path, we don't, I I don't think I find myself dwelling as much on where we are as I think Tess keeps emphasizing. It's so much easier to just keep devouring study after study and then just following along the lines as they're presented rather than independently on my own building these structures. Go ahead, Kathy.
See where we are. Oh, sorry.
Was that a question? Oh,
No.
okay. No, it's fine. Troublemakers. Okay, so we have the first job is to see where we are in the big line, 144,000. So to do that, we build our fractal line, the line of the priest, so that we can more clearly identify the waymarks. Now, Tess also has emphasized Parmender too, that the waymarks are also a time frame. They're not just hard-nosed, hard-line dates. Like November 9th, 2019, it wasn't on that day. It was rather using that day as a symbol for a broader meaning. So when we come to our line and we see that 2019 was our increase of knowledge, was our close of probation, and we're after that approaching the increase of knowledge. She had May through September highlighted studies called the Apis Bull, and this helped to bring into focus the kind of the Protestant influences, the apostate Protestant influences that Adventism just didn't prepare ourselves to even notice to be a danger or needing to be reevaluated in general. So the Apis Bull studies, it's a time frame because it goes from May to September of 2000 to 2019. She said February of 2019. Oh, May and September. I'm sorry, that's something else. May through September of 2020 is the time frame for the increase of knowledge. I have something else in my head, and now I don't know where that goes. But she was talking about Brazil. Okay, never mind. That's later. So May through September 2020, we have the focus of the Apis Bull. And she highlights the Apis Bull simply because those studies, because she was wanting to go into the Millerite history during that time, or not focus rather on the Millerite history, to go more into to expand beyond that. And maybe I'm misunderstanding. She did want to go into the Millerite history, but not in the way that she kept being brought back there. So the first thing that we look at is, so we know that we're past the increase of knowledge. So we are approaching formalization on two lines. So we're approaching the formalization of Panium, or our second advent, and then we're approaching the formalization also of the Sunday law on the line of the 144,000. So these are two huge issues that we're going to kind of fuse or unfuse, pull apart, and to see the inner workings. And not necessarily of the formalization, but just in what this means. So we have, she starts us off looking at 3 different lines: the Millerite history, the counterfeit, and the apostate Protestant. Let's put Protestant. Put the conservative Protestant. So, oops. These 2, the Millerite line and the counterfeit line, are not going to be what she focuses in on for the German camp meeting. It's predominantly the conservative Protestant, apostate Protestant lines, where she is breaking down the the backstory behind the Apis bull that we've allowed into our faith, our beliefs, our religious culture. All of the different ways in which this, if you take the characteristics of the Apis bull being, courageous and strong and a fighting spirit, but also, kind of seeing those characteristics of what the Protestants, or what the evangelical Protestants are trying to espouse themselves with, and that's the strong man. That's the political powers that they're wanting to wield, because they have a misconception of the kingdom being on earth. And it's not a new misconception. This is just a repeat of ancient Israel and the misconceptions that it had. Now, the increased knowledge of the Sunday law in 2019. This is where she's talking about so the increase of knowledge on the Sunday law is February to August of 19. And this is beginning in Brazil and going to the German camp meeting. So that most of that year of 2019 brings the increase of knowledge of the Sunday law, so that we can have a better understanding of what this is. We no longer have the misconception of the Sunday law being a literal day in which is going to divide Christianity, right? There's 2 things, 2 institutions that she emphasized that the Alpha and the Omega histories delve into. And the Alpha is the Sabbath issue. That gets brought into focus in the Alpha, whereas in the Omega history, which is what we're in, the issue that we have to deal with here is marriage. And this is where we're seeing how in 2015 we made that mistake of seeing marriage as how the apostate Protestants have held it up, being just between a man, just between a woman. The Sabbath, no Adventist is really going to get upset about that. In Jesus's time, the Sabbath was mostly what was illustrated, what was not illustrated, but what the Pharisees tried to catch Jesus on. So this was a law of God's that they thought was in doubt or in dispute, the Sabbath. I'm talking about his disciples not doing the right thing on the Sabbath, Jesus working on the Sabbath. They even made sure to crucify Christ before the Sabbath started because they were such good Sabbath keepers. And so Tess said something interesting, that if the Millerites got that correct in their time, then this would get worked out during the 1,000 years. And then she said that she's not surprised that if we're struggling over the issue of equality for 2 years, then struggling over this for another 1,000 years is not beyond the realm of possibility. But we kind of see what's been done. We see the writing on the wall, so to speak, of what the histories tell us, so that when we come to our time, then we have all of this knowledge. We can properly apply this knowledge to our present day need, so that we're not still discussing Sabbath issues. We're not still pounding away at there's going to be a day of reckoning, Sabbath, Saturday or Sunday. That's not going to be the driving issue. It seems that marriage, during the majority of this year, so past the increase of knowledge of the Sunday law, being in between these times, the increase in knowledge and the formalization of the Sunday law, the knowledge that came was not just of the histories, not just of the Apis Bull, not just recognizing the lines, the conservative, the apostate Protestant influences, the counterfeit, and its place, but also this issue of marriage. Why Parmenter, maybe not why, but it's been very providential that Parmenter has been going through with us the marriage studies. I think most of this year his Sabbath classes have been, 2020. I'm still not in 2021, I guess. But having such emphasis on marriage in 2020, and I'm not surprised by that either, because in 2018 is when I went to France, and there was already marriage classes that he had been doing prior to that, over the course of several years, but then really started to focus in and emphasize marriage to really get us to understand what marriage truly is. But before we can do that, we have to reconcile God's nature, our nature, and his kingdom. If we don't understand those things, then how can we possibly think that we have a viable marriage? How can we think that, how can we expect ourselves to be welcomed if we don't know our host? So we back up and we understand that our place is right, our place right now. It's like right there, just really touching the formalization of Panium of 2021, of the second Advent for the priests. And then that also correlates to right before the formalization of the Sunday law for the 144,000. So we know that we have to prepare for these two. They're not the same. The formalization for the Sunday law is not the same as the formalization for the pre-Second Advent. So we have to, just like, well, that's a different study. So kind of have to hold these two things in our minds at the same time without overlapping them. That we are, in fact, on two lines at the same time, and these two formalizations are going to tell us something very different, right? The formalization of Paneum, of Second Advent, is not even going to fall at the same time as the formalization for the Sunday law. So let's not equate the two. But to get a better understanding of this apostate Protestant influence, of how the Apis Bull, festered and grew and multiplied within our Adventist mind, we need to look at the conservative Protestant line, the what she calls the "In God We Trust" line, and this is what she was bringing out in February, or wait. That was what was brought out in May through, no, sorry. Okay, I had it written, but now I can't remember. I can't find it easily. So the "In God We Trust" line, I think it was 2020 that this came about, and this is where I think the Apis Bull kind of has some crossing over with the "In God We Trust" line. And if you guys have better understanding of those dates, please don't hesitate to say anything. If anybody types something in that I don't see, somebody just yell it out. But this "In God We Trust" line is broken up into three distinct sections: the 1860s to the 1900s, and this is where the National Reform Movement is kind of burgeoning. The 1940s through the 50s, the 1979 period to present day. 1979 marks the moral majority. So, and these are the forces that are at play in our government, in our political system today. So the reason that, or how she got those dates is from that together. So there are three different sources. There is, and this is the document that she was kind of prefacing. This is a document that I think was sent out on the news media, or the media broadcast group, the Church and State. And somebody help me with this name, because I didn't catch the full title. All she wrote down was Church and State, REP. And I just didn't have time to go back and search for if this, I think it was Church and State.
In the early Republic.
In the early Republic, okay. That's what I suspected. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't in the Republican Party. So thank you. And then the second source is A.T. Jones. and there were 3 different sources that she went to, and I know I didn't write those down, but it's American Sentinel and something else. But A.T. Jones was mostly what she was gathering her quotes from back in 2000. I think it was the 2019 in Brazil. She was sourcing most of her material with A.T. Jones. And then the third reference is going to be the evangelicals. And the Evangelicals is a book by some guy. His first name is Francis, and his last name, hopefully you guys will be able to find it. But it highlights this whole span of time. And the reason that she keeps emphasizing going back to 1798 is because that's what definitively is given to us by inspiration as the time of the end. So we are, even though we mark our lines with 1989 for the 144,000 and the priests, we also have to understand Ellen White's, the purpose behind her wording is because of recognizing 1798 as the time of the end. She wasn't able, if you look back at, so this is the Millerite line, this is 63. In 1863, even before that, 1860, 1850, no mention of civil war. You know, yes, there are a few, I think there are a few things that she says that could be applied to her kind of premonition of wars and conflicts, but to come right out and say, going to have a civil war, the nation needs to deal with its slavery. Yes, she says that. Yes, she says that the Civil War is because God is judging all people for slavery. The Protestant mentality that stayed with Adventism did not pick up on that at all. It was Saturday or Sunday, hard line, and that's what they were looking for. In 1888, that was the history that she was in the middle of. So the Sunday controversy was alive, but was she seeing the world wars during that time? No. So she's barely able to see, so if she can't see the world wars, then how could she possibly see 1989 for the line of success? So this is how Tess broke down the Millerite line. The 3 chunks of time from 1798 to the Second Advent is the first line of failure to 1863, then the second history of failure surrounding the 1888, and then because this is the omega of modern Israel, we know this is the success. This is the successful movement, I guess, where God is going to make his will manifest. So we have to recognize Ellen White's shortcomings in a way. And I say that hopefully so it doesn't leave a bad taste in your mouth, but just that was a fact of the matter. If she couldn't see the world wars before she died, how could she see 1989? How could she see another time of the end? She couldn't. And not that we have another time of the end. We can make applications that 1798 is brought into 1989, kind of like refreshed the time of the end, that a new message is received to the people. And so a new reform line begins, the final movement. But in order to understand the success, and the success isn't a part of the Millerite line, this is just the continuation, so, of modern Israel. So I guess this will be fine. My own symbols are very weird, so I'm sorry. They just look weird. But when we reframe, taking out from our expectations that a physical Sunday law is going to come upon us in this timeline, we must first go back to what's already been done. And this is what Tess was saying, kept bringing her back to, this is how God worked. She was wanting to go forward with these studies, May through September, but what did God keep wanting her to do, or keep bringing her back to? And that was the history of the Millerites. And then the counterfeit line, but then from the Millerite line, the conservative Protestant, the apostate Protestant line emerged. And this is where our light for the Sunday law is truly going to be. This is why we need to understand the 1888 messages. So, going to emphasize again how we, so how we got to the 1888 being associated with the Sunday law, even before that. I didn't write clear enough notes. But Tess is using 2014 as a study of Midway, of, I can't read my notes very well. It's a study of Midway, of the midpoints, and this was, let's see, where is our line? Okay, so the 2014 brings us then to, if we look at the 151, bringing us to 2014, that's going to bring us to 1863. And then if we go back just 63 years, well, actually, that brings us to the 50s. And this is where we see the 1950 crisis, where I'm trying to think if that was when "In God We Trust." Oh no, it's the national anthem. If anybody has a better, clear memory of this, speak up. We want to say that it was 1950 that the national anthem had "One Nation Under God" added, and that was part of the. Well, yeah, go ahead.
I think that was a Pledge of Allegiance.
What would I say? Oh, Star Spangled Banner, Pledge of Allegiance. Yes, you're right. But there was something else in 1950. I want to say that this was when Adventism further went into to darkness by saying, we're not a cult. We reject these things that we used to believe, so we're no longer a cult anymore. Does that sound familiar? There was a book that was published in the 1950s, I want to say, that it was like a dictionary or encyclopedia of cults.
Was that questions or something?
Say it again.
They
Questions?
compromised. Okay, I'm sorry. Someone else is talking.
That's okay. Just one person at a time.
Okay. It's when they compromised on the sanctuary doctrine. I don't know. Maybe it was the 50s, and I know Froome was one of the Adventist guys, but I can't remember the name of the book. It was something. It was a book written by the Protestants, basically revealing the cults, and Adventism was listed as a cult. And so these three guys came back and said, oh no, this is what we believe. And they either took out the sanctuary doctrine or altered it, but it had all to do with the sanctuary and the compromise there. And I wish I could, somebody else probably has the name, Kingdom of Cults. That sounds right.
That's what Nathan is saying.
So,
yeah.
So anyway, that was just my thought there.
Okay.
And I think the book's name that the SDA came up with was Questions and Doctrines.
Yes. And that was to supposedly set them apart from other Protestant groups that were not considered mainstream, correct?
I think so.
Okay, maybe that was a weird question, but that was my understanding, that the 1950s is where, so there's several fractures with, and we'll actually go down to the In God We Trust line. I think you can see that okay. And we're down here in the 1950s, and let's see, I'm going to put how Tess put it here, 2014, that's 63 years, and then 1863 is the 151. So the 63 is half of the 126. This is probably too small for you guys to see, but I'll take a picture so you'll have that. But so these are the prophetic time spans, the study that she looked at, that she presented on, that brought these two histories, the 151 from 1863 through 2014, the Sunday Law for the Priests, and then 63 years minus is going to be, I didn't actually do that calculation, so I'm not going to say the date because I don't trust my calculation abilities in my head. But it brings us back to the 40s and the 50s timeline. And so these two time periods give us, it sheds light on what the Sunday Law is going to look like during this 2014 period. But it's also going to have little themes for these other Sunday Law the Sunday law, but also for the priests, or the priests take care of the Levites. Their Sunday law is here at Panium, and then the Nethinims when we reach the Sunday law. So all of these little components, they're going to amount to the big sum. We just have to take a look at what all of these little things mean. So these three time periods of the evangelical movements, 1860s to the 1990s, 1940s to the 50s, and the 1979s onward to our present time, these are the three periods of evangelical movements to change the United States and to mobilize political power. So this is all relevant to, and I'm not going to put, well, that's a little too tight. So it's all going to be relevant for the Sunday law. We've already passed ours, so now all we need to do is go back to those histories and kind of pull them apart and see what we mistook for prophetic truth versus just like grandfathered in other truths from apostate Protestant, from the evangelical movements, from these time periods that are overlapping the Millerite time periods that did not influence us properly, or that we even allowed to influence us is maybe even a bigger admonition. And of course, since we didn't live at this time, I'm not blaming us personally. It's just one of those, it's like recognizing the sins of our fathers. It's important to go back and to take a look at what others did rather than having this personal hatred towards them, just seeing, okay, that's what happened. That might have been, why I allowed that prophecy or that study to be accepted as truth when really it was the Apis Bowl, and the last, Trump being the last president is one of those examples. So looking back to the increase of knowledge for the Sunday law brings us to 2019, right? So 2019, the increase of knowledge for the Sunday law. And this began February of 2019 at the Brazil camp meeting, and she marks it going until August, which I think is, she's just talking about this time frame, not that she was teaching all that time in Brazil, but simply that the studies that shed light on this, on the Sunday law, happened from February to August of 2019. And the subject matter was on equality. In February of 2019, the subject matter of equality started to become an issue that was something that she was noticing was going to have to be addressed. And that was, equality was associated with August. February was associated with the 1888 materials. So February of 2019, in Brazil, the first step that she takes in bringing this increase of knowledge of the Sunday law is the 1888 materials. And these are studies misunderstood by Adventism. The increase of knowledge radically changes Sunday law. what it looks like. So how Sunday law looks like, that it's not going to be a day dependent on one day or another. Therefore, we must understand the external events of 1888. We didn't understand slavery or the Civil War properly at that time to even think that it was a topic to be studied. So another, I think, a piece of this In God We Trust study was also dealing, I'm guessing you guys might remember Jedediah Morris. And in his work, and somebody who has more familiarity with him, I have not looked into him very well or very thoroughly, but he had a role in politics around that time. He was friends with John Adams, right, or John Quincy Adams, the second president. If anybody can correct me or has better understanding of that. So he was this is the son of the gentleman who developed the Morse code. Jedediah Morris had a deep desire to, I think he helped bring about the teetotaler movement, that word is escaping me, but abstaining from drink is all temperance movement. Yeah, thank you. And so he did not, I don't think he lived in 1798 though. I think that was just like marking his time frame in which the work that he did, has the impact over that timeline. The time of the end from 1798, Jedediah Morris has an impact. And because of that, maybe not because directly of Jedediah Morris, but he was a contributing factor, Adventists saw that there were two strains of truth. There was the conservative and then, of course, we can guess what the other party was, the liberal, not necessarily party, but just mentality. So there was the conservative mind, worldview is another way of putting it, and then the liberal worldview. And this is where a lot of people were in that time in this first evangelical movement, where they were really anchoring their, their position in, in the political world, so to speak, of either, so there were all these different positions where religious people would participate in government affairs and commerce with multiple, states. I'm thinking of like Thomas Jefferson, who would go to France on a regular basis. He was a proponent of global free markets and I guess kind of this kind of a UN mentality, if you can follow me there. Whereas on the flip side, there was this very heavy resistance to anything liberal. So now we would see this as, opposing the UN or opposing the World Council of Churches. And what this actually did was it divided us, sure, from other Protestants, but or others in the world, but it also made us bedfellows with the conservative Protestant group, the conservative Christians, the evangelicals. So we began to look just like the rest of these evangelicals by holding on to this conservative mindset. And this understanding took us from February of 19, let's almost say 2 years. It's almost February of 2021. And so, and I know that there's even more layers to it than what Tess has already brought to the forefront. But if we're looking for threats of any political party to impose a Sunday law, then we haven't learned. Then we're just doing the same, we're repeating the same mistakes of ancient Israel. So we have to retrace our steps from before the time of the end. And these are the three sources. The Church and State and the Republic, A.T. Jones, and the book The Evangelicals are the three sources that Tess is going to use over and over again to try and drive this point home for us, so that we might have a better mind for what's ahead, rather than false views permeating our actions, our words, our even our mentality. You know, if there's still a part inside of us that resists, working with global leaders or working with an ecumenical group of churches all over the world, then we might still need to work on getting a right, proper understanding of how the Sunday law is going to impact us presently, because that mentality is no different than the 1860s to the 1900s. It's an old mentality. It's an old, frame of mind that Tess and Permit are both. And of course, since they're doing it, I can honestly say, well, not of course since they're doing it, but it's not just them. God is using man, Tess and Parminder and ourselves to pass on this information. But first we have to really get clear ourselves on it. So does anybody have any questions? I'm gonna look in the chat. Okay.
No, but
Anything
I think
needing to be
I
clear?
don't have. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have questions, but
Okay.
I just think that was a really good job on reviewing that presentation from Elder Tess. I too have been neglecting to, as you say, look at the roadmap to see where I'm walking, to see where we as a movement are. And so that was really good. Second witness for me to keep that more of a priority, so that, like you say, GPS really takes away a lot of our tools, and it's true.
Yeah.
And you're in a vacuum when you're on GPS. You don't know what's ahead of you
Right.
or behind you. You just know where you are without any surrounding evidence, is how I felt with it. But I like paper maps that are big and I can see the big picture. And so I really appreciate what you did. It was a really nice job. So thank you.
Praise the Lord. Thank you. Trying to get the whole of the board. Is there anything else that anybody has?
Hello. I'd like to
Hi,
share
Bob.
that there's a PBS Frontline documentary. It's a 6-part documentary, and it's called, what is it called, Penny? God in America. And it's a 6-part series, and I haven't finished watching it. I'm only partway through the 5th one, but it really, really, really gives a lot of history, and is very accurate to what happened back from the start of this country all the way through, and it fills in a lot of details of things that Tess has not even shared with us yet. And it also, there's things that Tess has shared that they don't share. And so it just all fits so tightly together. It's amazing. And so I would recommend people watching that. I know apparently Tamina had come across it some time ago and put a good word in on the Bible thread about it. But, Penny started watching it. She found it independently, and it's really good.
Good. Now I'm trying to think if that was a new release or if that was one from last year.
Yeah, last year, I think.
Okay.
This has been out for several years. I've watched this thing probably about 3-4 years ago. I don't know how long ago it was. Yeah.
Could you repeat the
I need to
name of it
rewatch
again?
it though.
This one was from 2010.
Oh, okay.
So it's not
God
brand
in
new.
America.
Yes,
That's
and you can find it on Amazon Prime, maybe on YouTube.
Okay.
It's really good.
Thank you. There's a lot of, I'm seeing more now than maybe it's just because it's more fresh in my mind. Like when you buy a new car, you have a car that's a certain color, then you start to see, the same color everywhere. So I think my sensitivity to the evangelical mark on society may be making me more susceptible to seeing more programs on the subject. But probably within the last couple of weeks, I've seen more, 20-minute or an hour-long news documentary type things on Vice, on DW News or DW documentary. That's a German broadcasting channel. Dywald, I think, DW or Deutschwald. I think that to me it's just, again, the power of this message of, even I think we all were pretty aware of, Tess preparing us for these times that we've been in, even though she didn't say, a pandemic is going to befall us. To have the message cover vaccines before it became an issue, for the message to cover this Protestant history. Even I can remember being at the School of the Prophets for the first time, and we were talking about the literal Sunday law, and that was September of 17, and I maybe had like an inch worth of reading on the topic, and other than what was in the Great Controversy. But Theodore at the time was saying, because I made the comment to somebody, I don't know if it was Terry, Tessa's mom, or just, I know Luke was sitting right there, so I can't remember if it was just a broad statement, but I said, I don't know how we're going to be able to have a true Sunday law, the way that we're teaching it to be in the world, because I just didn't see it at the time. And then Theodore made it very clear that I didn't know what the history of Catholicism, of the Crusades and the Dark Ages, and which is true. I had read some, but not a full, like, delving into what caused all of that, what actual statements were made from people, what actual actions were taken, the arc of those events. And then, so I was at the mindset too at the time of just not questioning God, of, thinking that my whole belief system leading up to the part where I became enrolled at the school, I just needed to shelve that. I just needed to put all of that aside in order to get everything possible out of what God was telling me right now. And so I remember for a really short time having this belief of the Sunday law being literal. And then, oh, okay, of course, yeah, I can see how the Catholic Church can influence politics and the tide of abuses. But for Tess and Parmender to just so clearly rip those concepts down is really, it's beautiful in a way that, I don't know, it just lets me know that God is just directing the whole thing. But does anybody else have anything to add or comment on or question?
I think God is trying to heighten our awareness on the actual events and the issues that are going to prevail here at the end of time. And he's not only doing it for us as priests, 144,000, but he's doing it for those Levites and Nethinims as well, so that they can see what's going on. I'm just praising him for it. So again, I lived through the history, not with my lifetime, but just in the movement. I came into this movement in just before 2014, and it's just amazing how you can go so far, see certain truths, and later on you have to sift back through everything and decide, okay, what really is spot on and what isn't. So praise God.
Yeah. All right, well, if nobody else has anything. Sue Ellen, no questions from you? You're good?
Yeah, I'm good. I was just thinking that Jim and I have talked about how we lived through that time when they changed the Pledge of Allegiance, because when we first went to school, kindergarten and first grade, we learned the Pledge of Allegiance, and then like a year or two later, it's like, what happened? I thought we had that memorized, and now they got this extra phrase in there.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's like, it was like gaslighting us or something. Like, I know we memorized that right now. How did that get in there in God, under God, one country under God? Anyway, so we kind of lived through that, and we were both like, well, I can't remember exactly how old, but impressionable at when Eisenhower was the president in the 50s. And we were like, I like Ike. That was catchy. And and so that I was very interested when we learned more about it in our studies here, that was the time when Eisenhower kind of was influenced by the people that wanted the prayers, the council and prayer thing, where we're going to bring back morality and the American way and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, it's very interesting to study a period that you kind of lived through, but you didn't understand it at the time.
Sure.
So, yeah, I praise the Lord for this message and for Parminder and Tess and all of our teachers and presenters. And I agree that it's with you about how it's really, I don't know exactly the words, but that they just explain it. So, I think for one thing, Americans are kind of insulated. I remember a time when they used to call the Americans the ugly Americans because they'd go around the world acting like they owned it,
Right.
And
we call them Trumpers today.
yeah. And so when you think about everything, we impose our experience on it, the rest of the world, and I think what Obama was trying to do, which I kind of understood at the time, and I think that's why everybody didn't like him, was he was trying to bring us down to more right-sized and say, we're just neighbors in this world,
Yeah.
And then we translate that to, the Sunday law. Everybody in the world, there's a whole, I don't know how many, but probably half the people in the world that don't care about Sunday.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what you were saying about what Parminder and Tess brought up. There's not really a way to have a worldwide Sunday law when half the people in the world don't even care about Sunday or Sabbath.
Right.